They're not. And in emotional terms, we've got 6 core feelings that we're all born with, we're all hardwired with, right? One of them's happy, one of them's angry, and then there's sadness, fear, hurt, and shame, okay? And out of that list of 6, only one of them's happy. And in any one day, we go through all of those many, many different times, okay? Which is why that metaphor of the tree is so good, because you give yourself good strong roots and you can bend and flex and flow with the day. Whereas if you don't have really good roots, you are likely to become uprooted. And there's a lot of people searching happiness as the end goal, when the point is that just seek the joy in everything you do and you will start to find it.
Welcome to Ride to Success, the podcast that takes you on a learning journey to a more productive, creative, and active life through the power of the body. I'm your host, Pedro Couto Lopes. You can find me on LinkedIn under my own name. I'll leave a link on the show notes. Our guest is Julian Hall, an emotional resilience expert and anger management specialist. He's also someone who teaches individuals and organizations how to stay calm under pressure while living with a terminal diagnosis of stage 4 bowel cancer himself. So what's in it for you? If you ever struggled with pressure to succeed, felt lost outside your role or identity, or bottled up emotions because showing them felt like weakness, then this conversation is for you. Whether you are an athlete, a cyclist, or someone trying to stay strong for others, Julian's story will give you new tools, a new language, and a new perspective on what resilience really looks like. So stick with us through this episode and you'll learn how to redefine success when life changes course. How to build emotional resilience, not the Instagram version, the real version. And finally, we will explore how emotional suppression, especially in men and competitive environments, can quietly sabotage performance and happiness. So if you're ready to challenge how you think about success, masculinity, and mental health, stay with us. Welcome, Julian, to Ride to Success. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
I wanted to start, for those who might not know your work, could you give us a quick overview of what you do and what brought you into the field of emotional resilience and trauma therapy, and also a little bit about your background?
Yeah. So basically, I'm an emotional resilience specialist. That means I come from a therapeutic background, but like an awful lot of people who go into a therapeutic job or calling, it's my second career. A lot of us do that.
Right.
Yeah? And my first career was in financial services. So I worked for a large British institution on the high street, started there quite young, worked my way up, got to quite a high level in the retail banking sector. And then in a large change process, I left. And I'm in one of those strange places in my life where I don't know what I want to do next. And I've got to work all that out. And what I did realise was that I didn't want to go back into financial services. But during those 21 years, I picked up skills and qualifications in coaching, counselling, psychological profiling. And those were the skills I really wanted to take forward. So,
and what drew you to those? Like, what was there a need that you felt? What's kind of interested in those?
That's a really good point. I'd spent the last 10 years of my career effectively coaching and counselling people, and that's how I got the best performances out of my team. I was one of the top performing sales managers in this business. I won national awards for them externally. It was a fantastic place to work. And when they asked me, what's the secret? And my secret was, I listened to people and I helped them solve the problems that are going on outside of work, so that when they are at work, they're completely focused. And that's what I did. So I'd spent 10 years doing that. I wanted to take that in a more formal way. So I look around for who I can work with, and I come across this interesting group of people called the British Association of Anger Management. And they were looking to expand their group of associates out, and they were running a sort of franchise. So I trained with them for about 18 months. Then I set up an anger management clinic here in Derby, and I set about spreading the word and helping people with their mental health. The challenge being, that's 12, 14 years ago, and we didn't talk about mental health in the way we talk about it now. And that's what it was. Anger management was the hook to get us involved, you know. But even then, people didn't really want to talk about how angry they get, and so I found myself banging my head against a brick wall because I really wanted to work with businesses and organisations. That's where I felt the sweet spot was in terms of being able to help as many people as possible. So after about 3 years, I separated myself from the British Association. And that's when I set up Calm People. And if you take anger management and you take calm people, they feel like they're going in completely different directions. But the reality is they're not. All we're both trying to do is raise people's awareness of what's going on inside them when these interesting feelings of vulnerability bubble up inside us, and then give people the tools to work on themselves. And that's pretty much what I do every day of my life. And now I work with businesses all over the UK and the world, helping their teams and their executives remain emotionally strong.
I mean, it's quite, getting people to speak and open about their anger and their distress is quite difficult. It requires, I imagine, a level of empathy and level of openness that I don't, most people don't have, because you really have to, I guess. But you can tell me that, because what level of emotional openness does it require for you to be open to discuss and help these people?
It requires an awful lot. At the beginning of almost every workshop that I run, I spend a good 45 minutes doing what I call building safety. And 25 minutes of that is telling my story and talking about the issues I've gone through, not in a victim-like way, just saying, I've had these challenges, this is how they've affected my life, so that people can gradually relax, let go of their anxieties and settle into the room. And crucially, bring their real, authentic, vulnerable person to the room rather than their mask that they carry into workshops with them.
I mean, that's a very good point. You are building rapport with people that are in front of you, that don't know you from, very little about you, and you kind of are letting them into your life, if you will. And especially in a workplace where people are always very guarded, they have their kind of the walls around them that kind of, some people even have their work uniform. People have their work personas, and this plays across all of the industries. Cycling, cycling, I guess there is a bit more. People feel a bit more as kind of they belong there, because most of the people that work in cycling industry already have an affinity with cycling. Not all of them, but most of them have. So there is already kind of, if you will, not a need to put up a kind of work persona or be more guarded. And one of the things that kind of also caught my eye was...
Can I just
go for it?
Pedro, yeah? I think even in cycling, and possibly especially in high-level competitive thought and sport, people do feel a need to have a game face, put their mask on. They absolutely do, because in their minds, any sign of vulnerability is a sign of weakness, and you can't be seen to be weak. Yeah. So it's even more, but that goes in corporate boardrooms. It goes on in sales teams. It's basically all the same. We all fear appearing to be weak because we think that somehow makes us less good at what we've chosen to be really good at, and it doesn't.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. Thanks for bringing that up, and because I was. You are the expert, and I'm trying to understand as well as, and as this discussion is going to evolve. like you are drawing the parallel between sport and workplace, but there is very much a similarity between performing at your best level in sport, in cycling, and performing at your best level at work, in a boardroom, in a sales team, in a marketing team, whatever it is, because you want to, I guess there is that fear of not being perceived as weak or the weakest link in a team. So the kind of, it kind of really makes you think about the dynamics. You mentioned about your kind of where the seed of this career change started growing was from working with your team and helping them grow and be more confident in their job, and that's a skill that not a lot of teams kind of master, is how to remain united and driven towards a goal, but also kind of cohesive in their in understanding each other's needs and strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, there's a certain generosity of spirit that's required to be both intensely competitive and intensely supportive of your teammates. And I find that a really, really interesting balance, because on some level my teammates are competitors of mine, but if we don't gel together, we're not going to win anything. So it's a really interesting dynamic. Really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, as you were talking about that specific situation, I was thinking back to the cycling. How in sport that works. Cycling is seen from the outside. People looking from the outside in, like, it's seen as an individual sport because only one person can win a race. But the people within the cycling sport see it as a group sport, a team sport, because for that person to win, you need the team to work together to deliver that person and help that person get to the finish line first. So it's really an interesting dynamic where you have the individual that has the strength to do it, to cross the finish line first, but you need also the support, a cohesive team working together to help this individual who without the team can't get there by themselves. I wanted to kind of there was a point in your biography, as you describe yourself as calm-ish. And this is an interesting point, because you started anger management as a way to frame the workshops that you were delivering. And when I read this, describing yourself as calm-ish, this somewhat can be applied to everyone, perhaps. But correct, feel free to challenge me in my line of thought. But what I meant by this is that everyone is calm until they are faced with a challenge.
Yeah.
So you remain like you. It's kind of a balance that you have to strike.
Absolutely. And for me, the reason I describe myself as that is that as soon as you say to people, look, I'm an anger management specialist, I work in mental health, then certainly from my point of view, there's a perceived imposition from people that I now have to be perfect. Okay? and if they see me as perfect, they're also probably going to see me as slightly judgy and slightly impersonal. And right. I just want to emphasize to everybody that none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm on my own journey, but I've developed and learned and picked up loads of stuff over my lifetime that could help all of us and benefit all of us. And I just want to share that. And that means that, you know what, I'm a pretty calm person. Most people experience me as that until I get on the golf course. Right?
And the golf course.
There's just something about golf that, honestly, I'll be throwing my clubs around. I'm not what's going on. I just, it's my weakness, But other than that, actually, I'm a pretty calm person because of the way I run my mental health.
Yeah. I mean, and, you worked you worked, developing these workshops as well with your company now, Calm People. You've worked with people under extreme pressure, under a lot of stress, and when you look at success from an outside perspective, it's very easy to put goalposts on what success looks like. Whether it is material things, whether it is getting up the career ladder and getting to a position, very specific position in your company or in the industry. But but we have also the emotional toil of that. And from your perspective, having worked with boardrooms, with many companies, what is the emotional cost of chasing success from a purely materialistic position?
Yeah, I think it can be huge. It can be absolutely. I've been that person. I've been the person who was leaving the house at 6 a.m. before my children woke up, getting home from work at 7:30 when they should have been in bed, and saying, "Why aren't you in bed?" I've been that person. I've missed out on a lot of things that I would rather I hadn't missed out on. There's a deeper issue here, though, which is where we start to define ourselves by our job title, our career, and our career success. And what I know, and lots of other people know, is these things don't last. Yet we still attach ourselves to them and attach our definition of us as a person to those significant successes. And that means one day something's going to happen that's going to take all of those things away. And you've got to be in a place where you can adjust to that or already be adjusted to it. Otherwise, it's going to be hugely, hugely painful. And I think, we've spent years, 20, 30 years talking about work-life balance and what that means. And I think really we need to move into this area where we talk about physical, mental balance. Because if we're working physically and we're working cognitively on our success and our job, but we're not emotionally balanced, then we're leaving a vital part of this human ecosystem to cause problems. And we are an ecosystem. That's what we are. If something's going wrong physically, it's going to hit me mentally. If something's going wrong mentally, it's going to hit me physically in the end. So we need to be in balance as much as we can, and focusing only on success to the exclusion of everything else doesn't work. It seems like it does at the time. It's a way of maybe winning medals. It's a way of winning competitions, but it's not the way of winning that game called life. And that's more important.
Yeah. And I think, and that's kind of, it's very personal to each one and every one of us. That transition, I guess, can happen when you have a massive transformation in your life, when you kind of start learning more about kind of how to blend kind of the emotional, cognitive, physical well-being. And I wanted to, I'm interested into kind of turning on from your experience, your personal experience, kind of in 2023, you've been diagnosed with stage 4 of bowel cancer.
Correct.
And
yes.
You have been living with cancer for the last 2 years, and you have had to adapt your life, I imagine, massively. But correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the impression that I have. And along the way, you have had, imagine, to redefine what your life looks like, what success looks like. And so what has been the experience for you so far?
Yeah. So I just to give the full picture for everyone who listens to this. Diagnosed 2.5 years ago, stage 4 bowel cancer. Stage 4 means it's moved to another organ. In my case, gone through the lymph nodes to the liver. Immediately after that, I had to have an operation to fit myself with a stoma because the lump in my bowel was so large it could perforate my bowel, and that would have been even more life-threatening. So that was done. Then I start chemotherapy. And in that period, I'm going through what I'm doing exactly what I would advise any of my clients to do, which is I'm just sitting with that news. I'm not making any early decisions. I'm just letting it all settle before I start making choices. And then for me, I came to a choice in my life. And the choice was that I didn't want to have what I consider to be the standard normal fear-based relationship with cancer. And I see that relationship as one where people go into every meeting with the oncologist, every doctor's meeting, every nurse's treatment, every scan, every treatment they go through is filled with jeopardy. Okay, right. Is this going to work? Am I going to be cured? Yeah, and I didn't want that in my life because I knew that when we're in a constant state of fight or flight, our body is not in a place where it can mend and heal. And I need my body to mend and heal, so I need to be as calm as I can possibly be. So I start saying, well, I'm going to have a positive vision, self-vision-led journey through cancer. It's not going to be a fight. It's going to be a journey, and I'm going to enjoy it as much as I can. And that's what I've been doing for the last 2.5 years. Initial progress over 18 months was incredibly positive. Tumours shrinking. In September last year, we're preparing me for surgery to have surgery then on my lungs, my liver, because it's spread to my lungs by that time, and my bowel. And then we get the news that actually a tumour has regrown in my liver.
Right. Yeah.
And it's regrown in such a place that actually they can't operate. At which point, all operations get taken off the table, and suddenly the prognosis changes from we're looking to cure cancer to we're looking to keep you alive as long as we possibly can. And that's where I am now. Okay. And if I want to be over dramatic, I'll say, hey, I've got terminal cancer. The reality is, as my oncologist put it, she said, you're young, you're strong, you're fit. She said, your tumours are small. You could be here for 10 years. So that's what I intend. I intend to be here for 10 years at least. Okay. So I'm living with cancer. I'm living with an interesting diagnosis, but I'm not letting it stop me do anything that I want to do. That includes cycling. Not cycling. It includes swimming, badminton, golf. I do cycle, but I cycle on a motorcycle. I'm having a midlife crisis. I've got myself a big old motorbike. And so I'm thoroughly enjoying myself and I'm thoroughly enjoying my life. And what I seek to do is use everything that I know and everything that I do in my work to help me have the best journey possible and hopefully to help other people have the most enjoyable cancer journey they can have as well.
Yeah, I mean that's such a powerful story that kind of we need to kind of to break it down a little bit, if you will. I mean, kind of to understand a little bit more from coming from a place of curiosity. When you are delivered that prognosis, and what crossed your mind? Because what is the emotions going through your head? Because you have a family, you have friends. What is going through your head?
So, literally in the moment, my wife will describe me as super calm and as if I'm running a business meeting, because the oncologist has just delivered that news, and I go, okay, that's really interesting. Got a few questions about that, and we start talking about practicalities and so on and so forth. I then left and I cried my eyes out. Okay, and then that's me getting the emotions out and the overwhelmed feeling out, and then I let things settle and I start to work with that. And there's so many things that go through my mind. There's the, how do I tell people? Who do I tell first? And how are they going to react? How am I going to deal with all their reactions that now come towards me. All of them, supportive, but and then I have to work out, because I don't mean this in an old-fashioned sense, but I'm the person in my family leading my family through this. Yeah, I'm the one that set my stall out to be this positive journey, going to deal with it positively, and so I then need to role model that for my wife and my children, whilst also sticking to my values, which is that I'm not this person who doesn't feel emotion. I am going to feel fear. I am going to feel hurt. I am going to feel sadness. So I've also got to be able to express that. But I hopefully do that in the main in a really, really healthy way, so that they can see that you sort of bend and flex and go with all this stuff. There's no black and white to this. I think I read a quote once that said, "Be like a tree, have firm roots, but bend with the wind." Yeah. And that's what I try to do. And that's what I try to show my friends and my family, is that I've got good, strong roots here, of which they're all part of that. And then I get blown about by the wind, but I keep gradually coming back to the center point. And then that's what I'm trying to do.
I mean, it's a very, very interesting quote about the be like a tree. It kind of you need some flexibility, but you have to kind of have anchor point, if you will, in your life to know where you stand, but also move accordingly with life. I mean, and through since the diagnosis to this day, I'm interested in finding out if, as your identity as a person, ever really kind of changed, or have you noticed it changing? Because it's quite a big kind of change in your life.
Yeah, massive. I mean, my identity has changed many times over my life. It's changed from going through school and leaving school and believing deep down that I'm not good enough and I'm a failure, to putting immense energy into building a career that was probably all about proving that wrong and proving that I am successful, to losing that career and going, what do I do next? And redefining myself as a therapist and a coach and an educator. And then getting to this point where, for me, there was less of a redefining at that point. I just saw it as a massive, massive opportunity to say to the world, look, all this stuff I've been preaching about and banging on about for years, this works, because look how it helps me deal with one of the most difficult things any of us will have to deal with. And so I just saw it as a massive opportunity to live my life authentically and live my work authentically, and also an opportunity with what time I've got left to help a few more people. That's what I'd like to do.
Yeah. And I mean, and this is such an interesting point, because kind of like drawing some, if I can, parallels to athletes, to people that have a very deep passion for cycling. You define your life around your hobby, cycling. That's what is your outlet to express yourself, in the same way as athletes can lead a very single-minded focus on what they can do in their careers, and kind of that their identity is shaped around that, in the same way that you said about many people shape their identity around work and what work means to them. And for athletes, once their professional career ends, then that's the shift. They need to decide how are they going to play their next chapter, how are they going to define themselves, or are they going to evolve. In your instance was the that corporate career that kind of came to an abrupt end, that made you rethink. And then again, with the cancer diagnosis, again, a next evolving step. For me, just kind of talking about me a little bit, was cycling allowed me to kind of allowed me to see the world in a different way, and I took that to heart and kind of allowed it to kind of shape who I was. And now I'm trying to deconstruct that a little bit to see a wider picture, if you will, be more flexible and try to understand that cycling is not even though I love it and is my hobby, is not definitive of what I can do in life.
And for me, so I still have a challenge in my life, which is that I define myself as being fit and strong and healthy. I had a conversation with someone before we came onto here, underwriting me for travel insurance. And I said to him, the words I said, look, if you ignore the cancer, I'm disgustingly healthy. All right. So, and that's the way I still define myself as that. And yet life has a habit of, when we define ourselves as one particular thing, saying, you can't do that, can you? And in a minor way, I've played for 12 years. I played competitive badminton at a club. I've been there competing. I've loved it. I've really enjoyed it. And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I took a decision that I wasn't going to play badminton anymore, because I'm just not competitive anymore, because nearly 2.5 years of chemotherapy, it does take its toll on your fitness and your stamina. And I'm not able to be as competitive on the court as I want to be. So I stepped away from that. But I'm filling that with a stamina sport. And I started swimming again last night. And I went swimming again for the first time in 3.5 years. And I did 32 lengths. And I'll build that up. Okay. I'll build that up to a mile. And I'll do a minimum of a mile a week. I've already got my targets. You can see where it's going, But the point is we adjust and we go. Exactly. We don't go, that's the only thing I've got, it's all I can do. We adjust. And the human spirit is incredibly, immensely adaptable. And that's what we do.
And I mean, and building on that, there is that kind of, for me, correct me if I'm wrong, that for me sounds like, your practical, rational way of thinking, taking over. All right, I've set myself a new goal. I'm going to swim. I've swum, these many lengths today. Tomorrow I'm going to do more. But along these lines, sometimes I've seen it through other conversations, through myself. You set. Once you start a new sport, when you start a new work, it's very easy to start setting up milestones, and you very easily start to achieve them because it's it's there, it's a tangible. But you mentioned earlier on about the kind of the emotional side as well, and along all of these changes and identity shifts, you have kind of somewhat an emotional suppression. In my case, cycling took over, and that kind of allowed it to be the conduit to take my life forward. But then I didn't address the emotional needs that I had, and now I'm having to kind of backtrack and address that to kind of be more well-rounded. And I wanted to kind of touch on that point specifically, on when you start repressing your emotions and start projecting and putting that into your work, into a hobby, a sport that you have, what is the backlash that happens? Because it will catch up with you. And I'm just interested to hear your take on that.
Yeah, it will. It will. It absolutely 100% will catch up with you. All right, let's be clear about that from the beginning. And when you started the beginning of that question, you sort of said, so Julian, you've gone pragmatic. You've replaced one sport with another, and you're setting goals. And I do want to be really clear that I've been reflecting and thinking about that for some weeks, and it was a considered decision, that was an emotional decision. It was me feeling quite sad about letting go of badminton and being aware of that. And it's only once I've sat with that sense of loss and processed it that I can make really pragmatic, proper decisions. Okay. Otherwise, as what I think you alluded to really, is that maybe sport is filling a gap in my life and I just moved from one filler to another. Yeah. And I'm not really addressing the gap it's filling. I'm just continuing to fill a gap with some other sport. Yeah. And then this idea of suppressing emotion, I think this goes on in sport all the time, because when you're massively competitive, you do not want to show any vulnerability at all. Right? Because if I appear to be vulnerable, I might be weak, you might beat me. That's not allowed to happen. So I don't show any vulnerability at all. And so what that means is that our feelings of sadness and hurt and fear and shame and all that stuff, it just gets pushed down and pushed down and pushed down. And the problem is, I think you referred to Pippa, and I read Pippa's story. Yeah. And she says at some point, she says, I had this box which I threw my emotions into. Yeah. And most of us have got that box. We throw all of our feelings of vulnerability into it. We wrap parcel tape around it. We put a note on the side that says to deal with later, open brackets, maybe never, close brackets. And we throw it to the back of our mind. Yeah. And that's what we do. So we say, I'll put that to the back of my mind. I'll deal with it later. But we never deal with it. And we think that by putting it to the back of our mind, it will go away. But it won't. And my message is to people is the energy you use in throwing that to the back of your mind and suppressing it, all that energy, you give it to those feelings of vulnerability. So what happens is one day they get more and more and more energy, and then one day they go, whoa, here I am. And that's when you feel overwhelmed and you just can't cope and you break down crying, and then you feel ashamed because you're vulnerable, and it all goes in a big spiral. And we go, oh my God, you see, that's what being emotional is about. I'm never going to feel emotional. And we go back to suppression again.
Yeah, you mentioned Pippa, like just context is Pippa York. I know, and she's now transgender, and I kind of, she had to be in a previous life competitive, cold, to survive in pro cycling, and kind of, as you described, it's like if you don't address that, you are suppressing the emotion. There's a kind of a vivid image that I have of what it looks like to suppress emotion is like when when you have the foundations of your house burning, but you decide to close the door nevertheless because you don't want to see it and ignore it, and you go away, and when you come back, when you have the houses on fire because you just ignored it, but the fire will still grow, it will still evolve, and when in fact you're losing control of it rather than addressing it.
Yeah, that's a lovely metaphor. It's like what happens is if you've got a house with maybe 8 rooms in it, it starts off in a small corner of a small room, and you ignore it, right? And then however long it takes, it's taken over that room. But I'm still ignoring it because I've got another 7 rooms to live in. Yeah, so I'm going out the house every day, ignoring the fact that it's on fire, and because it's only in one room, right? Yeah, but eventually we get to a point where we go, my God, I can't even live in this house anymore because I've allowed it to burn. And that's what we're doing by suppressing our feelings and emotions. So what I teach people to do is to regularly and often access their feelings and their emotions. Allow them to be, take them out of the box, examine them, play with them, just be those things. And then, again, put them to one side because you've got other stuff to get on with. That's okay. you're allowing yourself to have balance in your life where you acknowledge those things that go on, but you also focus on what you also need to do.
Yeah.
That's what we teach people to do.
And I mean, what, in a society where sometimes men can feel less able to deal with those emotions, or to confidently express them, through your experience working with teams, with individuals, what are some simple ways to address that, to be more confident in expressing these emotions that you have kind of suppressed over the years?
Yeah, so I recommend, and I use every day, I use journaling. Okay.
Right.
And what that means is that, very simply, is that I open up a page in a journal every day. I ask myself in my mind, how am I feeling? And I write about that. Okay. And we just see where it goes. It's free form writing. There's no style to it. There's no pressure to be perfect. I just write about what's going on, but it's about my feelings. Okay. And there's a combination of things going on there. One is that I'm accessing the feelings part of my brain. I'm understanding my feelings and emotions more. And also I'm writing them down, which means I'm getting them out of here onto there.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a really powerful thing to do. I'm effectively emptying my head on a regular basis. Okay. To mix my metaphors up is like your head in a bucket. Okay. and at the bottom of the bucket is your positive, solutions focused brain. Right. The problem is, every day we get up and life fills the bucket up with all these feelings of vulnerability and anger and sadness and fear. Right? And if we don't empty the bucket on a regular basis, it just overflows and our positive solutions minded mindset gets drowned out. So I use journaling for that. I also advise men who want to go into this, why not find a local men's mental health support group where you can go along, meet people who want to explore their feelings and emotions, and just connect with other people who want to do that. All right. And when I suggest that, I get lots and lots of reactions. And one of the dominant ones, particularly from people who don't want to do that, is, yeah, well, they wouldn't understand. They're not going to be like me. They wouldn't get me. No. And the point is, they don't have to get you. It's a safe place for you to understand you and other people in a non-judgmental environment. And that's really, really powerful. And then the third thing is, get yourself a coach, get yourself a counsellor.
Yeah, that's very important. I mean, you mentioned about journaling, and that's something that is many people attest to journaling as a way to put their thoughts down and have kind of a moment with themselves to reflect on their day, on where they are heading, what they have achieved. And and I think in journaling there is a power of kind of, if you will, mold or tell your story in your own words, rather than, because you have that moment where you can write and reflect, and those feelings of vulnerability, lack of confidence, they come to the paper, and you can then can mirror you in a way that you can see, okay, this is how I'm feeling. How can I address this in a way that I can share what it means to me in a more positive way, as part of a healing process. And kind of what I'm trying to get at is, in a very personal way, does journaling help you kind of see where you're heading as an reflect into the future?
It can, if I want to use it for that. It most absolutely can. I don't personally use it for that. I use a different technique for the future, which is called visualization, which I think a lot of you pro sports people will be well aware of that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so when I got my cancer diagnosis and I spent 5 weeks sitting with that pain and then took a choice that I was going to have a positive journey, I started building a vision in my mind of what my cancer journey was going to look like. Okay. And literally every day, part of my morning routine is I come downstairs, I stretch because I'm of an age where I need to. I meditate because I want to keep myself in a calm place. And then I visualize. And I visualize what the next 2 to 3 months are going to look like. You know, and I was doing that through the whole of my cancer journey. Yeah. And there'll be people listening to this thinking, well, it didn't work, did it? You got a terminal diagnosis. And in some ways it didn't, because I was visualizing success. I was going to have a really great journey, which was going to end up with it being taken out of my body and I'd live forever, you know?
Yeah.
But actually, apart from that really bad news in September, the journey has largely played out the way I've visualized it. And that means that I've enjoyed every chemotherapy session. I've enjoyed every interaction with my doctor, with the nurses. I've enjoyed talking about my cancer diagnosis. You know? So all these things were part of the vision, and they're still in the vision, and they're still there. So I can use journaling to look at the past and how I feel. I can use visualization to say, how do I want to craft my own future? Yeah. How much influence can I have over my own future? And the answer is a lot if I set my mind to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's it's very powerful in how you can visualize what you want to achieve, even if you don't achieve that. It sets you in a positive track into getting kind of aligning your thoughts in what you'd like to have, kind of almost bring that energy to you, rather than because as you mentioned, the metaphor of the bucket, if you don't have that clear idea of what you want to go, where you want to do, influence from the outside, worries, they will just seep in, and just that then will become what the reality of what you're dealing with.
Absolutely.
If you don't have that clarity.
Yeah, and without getting a little bit too woo-woo, but this moves into the area of manifestation as well, which I sort of half get and half don't. But there's no doubt I've manifested the positive experience that I've had. Okay, so there's no doubt about that. Where I get to the limits of manifestation is where people talk about manifesting wealth into their life and money and success and things like that, which it helps. That focus and that visioning helps. But there are so many other things that impact upon that as well. But the fact that we take that focus and we visualize what's going to happen, where we can impact on that, and we open our mind up to look for the opportunities to impact that. And as a result of looking for that, we find the opportunities and we grow ourselves more and more and more every day by having that vision of what we want our future to be.
Yeah.
So really important.
Sorry?
It's really important.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, you mentioned about not going in too much into the woo-woo kind of space. And I'm kind of, it started to make me think about, myths that there is flying around in social media and internet about, many people have different opinions about how emotional health looks like, mental health, strategies to improve your mental health, and so forth. And from your perspective, I'm interested in finding out, if what's one myth about emotional health that you'd love to bust. Especially for men.
So the myth I'd like to bust is you cannot be happy all the time. All right. There's people out there on the internet that will try and sell you this idea that if you do this, or you take this pill, or you use this product, you will have nirvana, you will be happy all the time. And they're out there on their videos, and we all know what we do on social media. We only put the good stuff up there. Yeah. So everyone's seeing everyone's edited clips. They're not seeing what goes on the cutting room floor. So the problem with that is that we all start to get this idea that there's this whole group of people out there who are amazingly successful and happy all the time. Bullshit. They're not. And in emotional terms, we've got 6 core feelings that we're all born with, we're all hardwired with, right? One of them's happy, one of them's angry, and then there's sadness, fear, hurt, and shame. Okay? And out of that list of 6, only one of them's happy. And in any one day, we go through all of those many, many different times. Okay? Which is why that metaphor of the tree is so good, because you give yourself good, strong roots and you can bend and flex and flow with the day. Yeah. Whereas if you don't have really good roots, you are likely to become uprooted. And there's a lot of people searching happiness as the end goal, when the point is that just seek the joy in everything you do and you will start to find it.
Yeah, that's a brilliant insight. It's a brilliant insight because it's in a very simplistic way. You know, you look for what makes you happy, but you then along the way you lose sight of, you know, the simple small things, your everyday. That's what you should cherish, because those are the moments that will build up to something that will give you fulfillment, if you will.
Yeah, and if we go back to the journaling thing, there's proven research that shows that experiencing gratitude improves our mental health and our physical health as well. So people, and I do this regularly, build into their journaling at the end of each day 3 things I'm grateful for. And the point is that one is that you re-experience those things by thinking about them again. And 2, you're training your mind to look for things to be grateful for, which means the next day and the day after, you're looking for them because you know you're going to answer that question at the end of the day. And it goes on and on and on and on. Yeah. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. It's I've started doing that, and it's you know, it's surprising how small it can be. But you know, like whether it is preparing a meal, you're grateful for that. Whether it is something, you know, being the sun is out and you feel grateful about that. So small things. It doesn't have to be big, like things that you're looking for in your day to day. And
it doesn't have to be a PB. Yeah. But you can still enjoy the ride that didn't get you a PB. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me at the moment, just being able to get to sometimes just get on the static bike and just pedal for 20 minutes. It's immensely I'm immensely joyful for that moment, because it's, you know, with a young child, family, you know, cycling becomes less of a priority. And you know, having that moment to kind of pay attention to my body, it's important as well.
Yeah. So let me tell you a story. It may be relevant to people listening to this. When I was early on in my corporate career, my way of dealing with stress was to exercise. Okay. But I couldn't just exercise. I had to improve as well. Okay. In everything I did. And I started off with running. And so instead of just enjoying running, what I did was I set a route. I did the same route every time, which frankly is boring, because if I did the same route, I could measure myself. Yeah. And of course, then I had to beat my PB every time. And I ruined running for myself. So I moved on to cycling. And I'd go track cycling, not road cycling. And I'd have a route, I'd have a timer, I'd have to improve my time every time. 6 months later, I've ruined cycling I went on to do the same with swimming. So I
Wow.
ruined the whole triathlon. Right? And then as I gradually grew up a little bit, and bear in mind I'm still growing up now, I went back to running, and I discovered that I could go out for a run and just enjoy the run.
Yeah.
And that was an immensely empowering experience for me, to be running through the streets of London where I'd be working and stopping overnight. And I'd be going for a jog, and I'd be looking at the buildings and saying hello to people. A bit weird in London, I know, but I'd be
Yeah.
doing that. And I just enjoyed the whole experience of going for a run rather than needing to beat a time or feel I'd got better. And I think that competitive athletes often, at whatever level they are, they get drawn into that mindset, which, let's be clear, it's a mindset for misery. That's what it is.
I mean, it's yeah. I'd imagine I've never been a professional athlete, but there is that single-minded focus, and you can't sustain that. And there's many athletes that come to retire and they're kind of left crushed by because they didn't prepare for retirement, or just that whole identity kind of was not built for a life afterwards. And
it's worse if that identity and that professional sport is taken away from you because, for instance, injury, which happens suddenly. Whereas, as I described with badminton, I'd had a few months of realising I wasn't good enough. I sat with it. I took a considered choice to stop. Yeah. And I think a lot of athletes, professional ones included, they feel themselves not being as good as they could be, and they start to set their mind forward into what are they going to do next. And that's really healthy. And we could all have that transition mindset in place as early as possible.
Yeah. I mean, with that also comes the kind of, learning the tools to be more resilient and to have not only to prepare for the transition, but because there will be moments of doubt, kind of lows and highs. And I think a lot of people struggle sometimes with kind of being, lacking the motivation. But more importantly, this is understanding that motivation is just webs and flows, and you can't attach that to your identity. You have to kind of dig a bit deeper into whether it is cycling means to you, how work defines you, and along the way build the tools, whether it is kind of breathing exercises, whether it is journaling, whether it is counseling, to help you navigate those challenges. And as we've been reflecting a lot about your journey and the webs and flows of your life. If you looking back, was there ever a moment that you think now from your 2020 vision, if you will, that's where you think I should have been more resilient, or I didn't have the tools to deal with in that moment, and now I recognize that I could have been better?
Oh, there's loads of situations in my life where I've felt like that, and the reality is that when I was less emotionally aware and less emotionally equipped, my way of dealing with those would have been to either get angry, have an emotional outburst, and then, retreat into shame because you're not meant to behave like that. And then eventually get to the point where I pretended nothing's happened and nothing's wrong at all and everything's okay. Or I'd rely on alcohol, or I'd rely on sport to get those negative feelings out. So I've got loads of situations in my life, and the most jarring ones are really, I think, when I left financial services, because I left pretty brutally. I was exited very, very quickly.
Right. So you were let go then.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be at executive level, so I had a package that allowed me time off for a bit of contemplation. But what I really did was I played very, very bad angry golf for about 6 months, and on the surface to everyone else, it looked like I was having a great time. He's out every day playing golf. But really, I was just a very, very lost little boy trying to work out what I was going to do next. And I needed time. And golf was the vehicle for that. But it wasn't great, really. I could have done with some really good coaching and some really good counselling at that point.
Yeah.
But I wasn't emotionally equipped, even though I'd got those skills myself, to say to myself, go and do that for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
Whereas
a very
now,
good point.
I'd get hold of my therapist in an instant and say, we need a session.
Mm. Yeah, and now kind of mental health is in the discussion. It's people are aware of it, whereas 10, 20 years ago, even more, it wasn't. Sometimes it was even a taboo talk about that amongst male friends, and that you'd find different ways of expressing that. Yeah, through anger, through drink, through sport. Yeah, but now I think it's important to have these conversations so that as you know, normalizes and opens up the possibilities for people to look for different ways of working their own working their own stuff out, if you will.
Yeah.
I wanted now to kind of bring kind of this conversation to a close, and with a question that I ask of all my guests, and I think is particularly pertinent to what we have been discussing today, and it is, what does success look like to you?
Yes. So I guess my idea of success has changed as my life has changed.
Mm.
And so for me now, genuinely, I want to have whatever life I've got left, I want to have a really fulfilling and enjoyable life. I want to spend the appropriate amount of time with my family and my friends. Bearing in mind, they're busy as well, so they can't devote themselves to me all the time. And I hope and would like that by talking about my condition and my journey, I can help other people who will be challenged with cancer in the future have a better journey.
Yeah.
And that's what success looks like for me now, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, yeah, I totally understand that. One, success, it's ever evolving. There's never a definitive way of for you to define success. It is ever changing as you grow, as you evolve. And second is, having this conversation about mental health, but also about the cancer, that is helping also understand that how to position yourself, how to work with that diagnosis as a way, as an opportunity, in the way you put it as well. So, and I think there is loads of important information that you have shared, that I think people that going through their own mental health struggles, whether in the future with cancer diagnosis, I think will help as well to kind of understand your experience and how that can inform other people experiences. I wanted now to now put to you a question. It kind of is part of the podcast tradition, where every guest leaves a question to my next guest, not knowing who they are. So the question that was left for you is the following: what is your personal interpretation of social impact? And and how we can. Yeah, let's start with that. It's a two-part question, but I'll start with that. What is your personal interpretation of social impact?
So for me, I interpret that more in a business sense, but it extends to individuals because these days we're all influencers, aren't we? So, but
Without personal brands, yes.
you've got it absolutely. Which is so for me, social impact is how can I carry on doing what I do, but make sure that impacts as positively on wider society as possible.
Mm-hmm.
That for me is social impact, and that and I think that gets tinkered with. No, it doesn't. There's far too many things happen in corporate world which start off as really great initiatives and they become tick boxes. Mental health, unfortunately, is one of those. Okay, there's a lot of businesses out there doing tick box mentality to the mental health of their employees. And I think social impact started off as something really, really important where businesses said, hold on, we can be socially impactful at the same time. And now it's them giving their employees one day off a year to go and dig over a garden somewhere and say, look, we've done social impact, And I think that everybody and every business could just hold in their mind, how socially impactful am I whilst I do what I do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very good point, and also it plays it to you as a person, right? Forgetting now the corporation side of it, you as a person can do within your group of friends, within your group of influence, within your community, to further benefit your neighborhood, further benefit your cycling club, and whether it is raising money for a worthy cause. It's kind of I'm broadening out what is the definition of social impact. But this this touches upon the kind of the work that you've been doing to raise money for I wanted to also give you this platform to share the work you've been doing because you have been raising money for 2 charities, also to help an athlete.
Yes.
And I wanted to give you this platform to kind of explain
Thank you.
Also the impact you are having on charities and the local communities.
Thank you. So the story is basically, if you take a core dozen of my friendship group, all male, all of this sort of age, we've known each other for a long time. We're a really good friendship group. And in total, 4 of us have been diagnosed with cancer, okay, in the last 5 years. 1 has died, okay, 1 will, and 2 others are now deemed to be cancer survivors. Okay. Mm-hmm. And we got together, we said, look, we'd really like to do some fundraising. So we sat down and said, who would you like to fundraise for? One of the guys said, Blood Cancer UK, because he's survived blood cancer. Okay. I said Macmillan, because slightly cynical edge. I think I'm going to be using their services one day. So why don't I raise some money for them? And I do think they do a hell of a lot of work. And being more serious about that is that what Macmillan do, or what they started off doing, is they help people have a good death. And we don't talk enough about that in this country. We spend immense amounts of money and energy trying to stay alive, when the uncomfortable fact is we are all going to die. Okay, so we need to talk about how we're going to have a good death. And then the third one is a British javelin thrower called Becca Walton. She's 27 years old. She's number 1 in Britain. She's the British title holder. Okay, she's centimetres off the qualifying margin to go to the next international competition, the European Championships. Okay, but even if she qualifies with the qualifying throw, she won't get financial support and she won't get invited to go by British Athletics. And the reason for that is because she's not guaranteed to get them a medal. We've taken sport, we've taken elite amateur sport in this country from you represent your country and you achieve your highest level and you achieve your full potential and you represent your country to no, you perform at your highest level and you win medals. So Becca needs funding, all right? And we've chosen her as one of our 3 causes to get funding from us. The link back into that is her dad, Derek, is one of the fathers who was diagnosed with cancer and who sadly passed away. I still feel massively sad when I talk about him now. He's a very close friend of mine. He died at the beginning of COVID. He was an incredible individual. So there's a big emotional connection to all 3 causes for all 12 of us buddies, 11 of us. Derek's there in spirit, and that's what we're raising money for. We're at £15,500, £16,000 so far. We'd like to get to £50,000. That's where we are. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about that.
No, I think it's necessary because it also highlights the positive impact that you have within in a broader scale, not just with your family, not just with the businesses you work with, but in a more altruistic way, if you will. And I will put the link on the show notes of the podcast, so everyone listening can go visit the link and make a donation. And with that, I want to say massive thank you to you, Julian, for your openness and really to breaking it down how individuals like myself can understand better how to navigate the challenges of being emotional resilient in our lives, really, and also to be very honest about your experience dealing with cancer and how you are working and kind of seeing the opportunities that it gives you along the way.
Thank you, Pedro, and thank you so much for the opportunity to come and talk about it. And this has just been really interesting and so enjoyable. So thank you.
If you haven't already, take a second to follow Ride to Success podcast, wherever you get it, and listen to it. That's the best way to make sure you don't miss another episode. And before you go, make sure to tune in to next week's Ride to Success episode. We're getting into more stories about people redefining what it means to win on their own terms. Until then, Ride to Success.